Hi everybody, I'm Vicki from Brain Injury Hawke's Bay. Welcome to Community Collaborators. Today I am speaking to Natalie from Road Safety Education. Hi Nat, great to have you with us.
Good morning, Vicki. How you doing?
Great, thank you. Right, do you want to start by telling us about your role at Road Safe Education?
Absolutely. So I am the program coordinator for the Lower North Island. So the program that we are mainly dealing with is our RYDA program. So my role is, or a large part of my role is to work with the schools to plan their RYDA workshop days, ensuring that we are meeting their needs for the RYDA workshop. So quite often schools will identify particular areas that their students are failing to drive safely on the roads, and so they want us to meet those particular needs, and so we make sure that our workshop caters to those for each of the schools. And then another part of my role is to be in ensuring that the schools have access to all of our resources. So we provide resources that they can use throughout the year so that they can embed road safety into their curriculum and be providing those messages right throughout the year.
Awesome. So that's a massive area that you're covering there.
Yeah, in terms of geographical area?
Yeah, and just the amount of schools in there, that's a, big job. Yeah. So you just kind of touched on RYDA. We've been really excited to be part of the program this year. Do you want to tell us what is RYDA?
Yeah, I might start with telling you a little bit how it came about.
Okay, great.
So our community partner at Road Safety Education is Rotary, and Rotary, it was a particular Rotary club that started the RYDA workshops. So began in 2001 in New South Wales, and there had been a quite a traumatic crash in which 4 teenage boys were killed, and it wasn't an isolated event. They had seen crashes with youth happening more and more often. So the local Rotarians got together and said, look, we need to do something to help educate our young people to drive safely on the roads. So they started running RYDA workshops and developed the sessions themselves. Later on, it got to the point where they realised that they actually really needed help in developing the sessions so that it would be best practice in education and the most effective that it could be. So Road Safety Education was then born, and because we are a independent charitable organisation, it enables us to put a lot of effort into the continual development of the RYDA workshop. So we have a board of advisors who come from educational backgrounds and road safety arenas that help us develop our sessions, and we're able to review those every year. So I mentioned it started in New South Wales, so obviously we have Australian origins. So Road Safety Education has been in New Zealand since 2006, and we ran the first RYDA workshop in Takapuna in 2007. So we've been gradually expanding our reach throughout New Zealand as we've been financially able to grow the organisation. So we have just come to it's the 1st of July today, so we've just finished our financial year yesterday, and in the last year we've had around 11,000 students in New Zealand come through the RYDA program.
Yeah, that's amazing numbers.
Yeah, it's really encouraging, I think, and actually the feedback from the students is really encouraging as well. So we ask them to give us feedback on the day, and it's good to see their feedback showing that they're actually, they have more awareness now, and they've identified areas that they're going to change.
Excellent. And that's the thing with a program like this, I mean, as you're putting it together, there's take-home messages that you hope are received, but seeing in feedback that students are picking up those messages is just so rewarding.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
And so on the day of the program, you work through different workshops and different presentations throughout the day?
We do, yeah. So we could have anywhere between around 100 to 200 students coming to a RYDA workshop day, and we divide them into 6 groups of students, and in those smaller groups they make their way around 6 different sessions. So shall I give you a wee overview of the sessions?
Yes, excellent.
Okay, cool. All right, one of them is Road Choices, and that is typically run by a local police officer. So most of the time we'll have a school community constable facilitating that session. And what they're aiming to do in that session is to show these young drivers or even young passengers that might be thinking about getting their licenses, show them that the graduated driver's licensing system is there to protect them and to help them gain more and more responsibility as they're able to take that on. Another aspect of that session is looking at distractions, so impairments, areas of what was I thinking of? Oh, the different impairments. So areas like cell phones, but also things like fatigue. And we all know about how drugs and alcohol can impair our driving, but quite often we don't think so much about how tiredness can impair our driving. And they look at other safety aspects in that one as well, like the importance of seatbelts in your car. Another one is Mind Matters, and this is actually a relatively new session. So this session is actually looking at, okay, how does my mind state affect my driving? If I am experiencing different moods, if I'm excited, if I'm anxious, if I'm angry, how does that have an effect on my driving when I'm in the car? And how can I actually change my mind state before I get behind the wheel so that I can be a safer driver? And in that session, we also look at music, which is quite insightful to students. They've often, and actually even the teachers that come along, I think we don't realise how much effect what we're listening to has on our actions at the time. So we look at what music is actually helpful to you when you're driving and what music isn't going to be helpful to you when you're driving. And of course things like setting a playlist and just letting it play, so you're not playing with the radio or fiddling with Spotify on your phone when you're driving.
I think watching Mind Matters has made me really aware of how differently I drive when I'm in a rush, when I'm stressed and in a rush. I'm impatient, and then when you kind of got plenty of time, you're waving people on at the, and you just drive in a completely different manner. And so that's something I've, since watching Mind Matters, has really checked myself on. Like, being angry and impatient isn't going to get me there any quicker. So just, you're going to be late, deal with it and continue.
Absolutely. And those little strategies, like what to do if you're going to be late, you know that somebody's waiting for you at the other end. Hey, before you start, or maybe pull over during your journey, if that's when you think of it, actually send them a text message or give them a call and say, I'm going to be 10 minutes late. And then it takes the pressure off.
Exactly.
And you're not rushing. Okay, so that's Road Choices, Mind Matters. Another one is the I in Drive. So this is all about me as a driver or me as a passenger in a car. And it looks at personality. So the students do a personality quiz, and what they discover in that is how likely or they are to take risk, or how risk adverse they are in all areas of life, and then they relate that to driving. And in that session they also look at how to speak up. So as a passenger, it's really empowering them to speak up, to get themselves out of a dangerous or potentially dangerous situation. And some strategies in there for speaking up, like direct doesn't necessarily always work. So you might need some good humorous strategies, or indirect ways that you can get yourself out of a car when you're not feeling safe.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, another one that we do is Drive SOS. So in RYDA, the SOS stands for So Others Survive. And this is being aware of the others on the road. Actually, I've got some really good feedback on this one that I might just read you now. So this was from a student in Hastings. And they said, Drive SOS was my favourite session because of the sentiment, drive so others survive. It really stuck with me and was definitely one of the main things I took away from my time at RYDA. I went home and Mum asked me about what I learnt that day, and I told her about the alternative meaning for SOS. This gave us both a new perspective on driving, especially seeing as I'm aiming to get my restricted so soon. I will now realise the power that I hold over other people each time that I take a seat behind the wheel, and I'll take the term drive so others survive with me moving forward. So it's getting them to think about vulnerable road users. Okay, there's a kid on a scooter over there, I need to keep an eye on them. I can see there's pedestrians coming up to a pedestrian crossing. What am I going to do to be ready to stop if I need to here? Or there's kids playing with a ball. What happens if that ball comes out on the road? And adjusting their driving accordingly so they can be looking out for others on the road. In that session, we also talk about truck drivers and the limitations that truck drivers have and how to drive with trucks on the road so that truck drivers can do what they need to do. They need extra turning space. They have big blind spots, and it's quite a new awareness for young drivers and older drivers that we need to be aware of, and just allow them the space that they need, you know. So Drive SOS. What am I missing out? Definitely crash investigators, which you and Seth have been involved in. I was going to save it for last, but I think I've missed another one we might need to circle back to.
The driving display one. Which one's that? When they've got the car and
speed and stopping. Okay, let's do speed and stopping and then crash investigators. Speed and stopping is our one outdoor session, and we will do everything we can to make sure we can still run that outside. We generally have a gazebo or some sort of sheltered area where the students can stand under if it's drizzling a little bit. If it really rains, we have an alternative indoor session. But speed and stopping is all about looking at the safety aspects of a car and showing young drivers what to look for in a car. So if they are getting into a car with someone, or if they're looking to buy their first car, what are important safety features in that car to consider to help keep them safe in the event of a crash. Because there's two aspects with crashes. There is wanting to prevent a crash from happening, and then it's also the second aspect is trying to keep us as safe as possible if and when a crash does happen. And in that session, they look at stopping distances. So that's the practical aspect of, or the extra practical aspect of that session, is that they do see a car travelling at 40, 50 and 60 k's per hour. And they talk about the increase in the stopping distance. So if you increase your speed, it disproportionately increases your stopping distance. So if you double your speed, you quadruple your stopping distance. You don't double your stopping distance. So they learn that that little bit of extra speed makes the difference in the event of somebody walking out in front of your car.
So it's so visual, isn't it, to see that the scarecrow man go flying, and
they do, so they do hit a dummy, and what they're doing there is they put the dummy where the car would have stopped if they were travelling 50 k's per hour. So in your normal built up area, the speed limit is 50 k's per hour, and if they had to stop suddenly, they would stop just in time before they'd hit that dummy. We've set it up that way so that that's where the dummy is standing. But we get the car to drive at 60 k's per hour, and then therefore they're not able to stop in time, and the dummy does, literally goes flying. So you see it go up and then land head first, actually, which is quite nasty if it was a real person. And so where we think, that creeping up to 55 or 60 in a 50k zone isn't such a big deal, we're showing them that actually it is a really big deal. It does make a big difference. So that one. And back to crash investigators. So crash investigators is the one that you and Seth have been involved with in the Hawke's Bay. And in that session, the students become investigators. So after every crash, an investigation is held to find out what factors impacted either the cause of the crash or the severity of the crash at the time. And they look at 4 different areas. So this is showing young drivers, okay, there's things that I need to be looking at. There's things that I have control over when I'm out there on the road. So the 4 areas are the road users, so that's both the drivers and the passengers. It could be anybody outside of that particular vehicle that's using the road as well. The road and the roadside, the vehicle and the speed. And so after introducing them to those 4 areas, we then introduce them to a crash survivor who in the Hawke's Bay is Seth. And he gives them a little overview of his crash, and then they come up with questions to ask him to work out, okay, how could either this crash have been avoided or the impact of the crash on Seth have been less severe. And they look at those 4 different areas. And actually, of feedback, we typically get lots of feedback on the crash investigators session, and that's because it's a real live, I want to say scenario, but it's a person's story that we're looking at, and so they relate it back to themselves. But this one here, I think, shows the importance of having somebody that's local. So this person says, crash investigators was my favourite session. It was broken down into 4 sections of what can cause or add to a crash that happened, as well as hearing from Seth and his experience, and the fact that he had his crash in Hawke's Bay on a road that I knew has enabled me to see why and the factors that add up to a crash. So because they could actually visualise, oh, he was on this road and I travel on this road, and start thinking, okay, what do I need to look for on the road, and how do I need to adjust my speed accordingly if I'm on that road or on another road.
And that's and what I love about crash investigators is it really looking at all those different headings. It really looks at what everybody is doing to try and keep you safe on the road. There's all these things with roading engineers and all these things, legislation going on all the time to keep you safe, but your part of that is to abide by those rules, do the right things, and that's your link in the chain. It is so, and I really also like the acknowledgement of, we really don't want crashes to happen, but human error, things do happen, unfortunately, and then looking at the severity stuff. So how are we going to make sure that they're not as bad as they could have been? So it's quite an empowering session as well, I think.
It is, isn't it? And actually quite often something that people don't know is that roads have safety ratings just like vehicles do. So we look at the safety rating of a vehicle because we want as many safety features in that vehicle as we can afford to have, so that it does help us in the event of a crash. It helps prevent or helps lessen the injuries in the event of a crash. But with roads, they've got safety ratings as well. And what we see with Waka Kotahi, reducing speed limits in some areas around the country. So on some roads, speed limits are being reduced from 100 to 80, and you have people mumbling and grumbling about that.
Just aligning
when they start
roads.
to look at, okay, the safety rating of this road is only a 2 or a 3, so therefore it's not really safe to travel 100 k's on the road. Then that creates more buy-in with that new speed limit. Or even if the speed limit is 100, we're showing these young drivers what to look for on the road. Okay, is there a hard shoulder? Is there a rumble strip on this road? How wide are the lanes? Are there safety rails up on this road? Okay, if not, maybe it's better for me to travel 80 k's on this road. And they can adjust it accordingly. And actually one of the students said that as well from your session with Seth. They said, I learned that even if the speed is set, it's my choice what speed I would like to travel. And I need to pay attention to the type of road I'm travelling on and adjust my speed to suit the conditions.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's so cool. Such great takeaways. Yeah, really neat.
It is, hey, yeah. Because realistically, speed is often a factor in crashes.
And speed can be a factor without necessarily breaking the law. You know, if you were going slower, just because the speed limit's 100, you travel around certain areas or bends, you know, it's not appropriate to travel that speed. And in speed and stopping, they learn that speed limit is set for the ideal road conditions. If it's raining, then that is not the ideal road conditions, and you don't want to be driving at the speed limit. Absolutely. No, it's such a neat program, and we've really enjoyed being part of it, and the more we're coming along to and watching the different sessions and seeing how it all pieces together. So I really enjoy that from crash investigators as well, because when we're talking about speed, we can talk about, you've seen that in speed and stopping, or the safety car ratings, or, you know, and so the more you see of the program, the more it all really does. You see how it all links together so well. And the sessions are designed to do that, to link with one another without repeating. Yes, absolutely. The sessions do. And what we do is we provide the schools with pre-workshop discoveries so that students can actually do a little bit of work beforehand to prepare them for coming to these sessions, and that increases the impact that it has on their behaviour. And the students coming through are year 12s? Yeah, they are typically year 12s. It's so designed for year 12 students. Beginning of their driving. You know, getting licensing is just kind of coming about for them, isn't it? Some would have learner licenses. So a lot of them are quite often. I ask them, so we have a welcome, and then we have a wrap up at the end of the day as well, with all of the students together. So those are the 2 times that they're together and not in these small groups. And quite often I'll ask them in that welcome, okay guys, where are you at on your driving journey? And ask them to put their hands up. So I would say the majority of students put their hands up to say they've got their learner's license. And then we have some with their restricted. You get the odd one that's got their full license, so they might be on the older end of a year 12 student, and they've done everything that they could to reduce the length of time on their learners and restricted. But then I actually ask them to also put their hands up if they haven't started learning to drive yet, and let them know that actually, hey, there is a lot in this day that relates to you as a passenger, because one of the things that they come away from after the workshop day is a realisation that as a passenger I have a lot of influence over what happens in a car. Definitely. So not only in the speaking up, but am I a distraction for the driver? Am I being helpful for the driver? Am I looking out for, you know, they can look out for hazards. Absolutely.
they can be the one to send a text or take a phone call. Or they can be a real source of distraction. They could be arguing with the driver, or they could be being silly.
The radio, all those things.
So they actually come out realising that as a passenger they have a lot of control over what's going on the road as well.
And can always choose to opt out, can't they?
Yes.
You know, that's you can get out.
Choose to get out of a car or not get into a car in the first place.
Exactly. So what's next, Nat? So when are we bringing RYDA back to Hawke's Bay?
We're excited for more days. Next year. This was our first year in the Hawke's Bay, so that was really exciting. We were going to be there last year, and then COVID got in the way. So it was really good to finally be able to bring RYDA to the Hawke's Bay. So we'll be back next year, and exactly when next year will depend on when the schools want us to come. So work with when suits them best in terms of their school calendar and other things that they have going on.
And so if a school is interested, they can get in touch with you?
Absolutely.
So we'll put on your contact details at the end of the video with your email address, and people can get in touch and register interest.
Absolutely.
Such a great program. You know, we think it's so worthwhile, and you know, everyone should go. And even the the Rotarians that are helping usher around the Rangatahi through the day, everyone there is learning as well. Not just the students. It's everyone is getting something from it. I learn something every time I come along. So it's a great program. And actually I've been with road safety education for a couple of years now, and just recently learned something new that I picked up just from being in one of the sessions. And I thought, I hadn't actually picked up on that before, or I hadn't considered that before. And for me that was it was actually from the speed and stopping session, and it was the fact that I needed to adjust my tyre pressure when I've got my car loaded down with all of the RYDA gear. Makes sense. But exactly, and you don't know what you don't know.
No. And I knew the tyre pressure that my my tyres needed to be at on my car, but realising, okay, when I've got all the stuff in the back half of the car, I actually need to up the tyre pressure for those rear tyres a little bit. So there's always little things that we can learn. For you
travelling around everywhere, you know.
Because it was a fairly new thing for me to have so much gear in a car.
So
it hadn't really come up in my driving experience before. I actually, with the Mind Matters one, I've noticed on our teacher feedback that they've started to pinpoint that one for themselves and say, I didn't realise how important it was to check my mind state before I get behind the wheel of a car. Another one that teachers quite often note is the awareness of trucks and their blind spots. So even as an experienced driver, that may not have been something that they've thought about before.
And this is it. I mean, all of us are using the road in some capacity, probably every day, and you can become really complacent. You know? And so just this opportunity to kind of just take note and feel just like everything, just that awareness of your safety, really.
It is, hey, because we quite often go on autopilot. I mean, how often have you driven somewhere and thought, I don't even remember that drive, because it's so familiar to you and you've started thinking about something else. Actually, one of the strategies I might just mention is commentary driving, because that helps when you're on autopilot. And I've used it, and my youngest teenage daughter has said to me when I started using it, Mum, what on earth are you doing? And I said, well, I've just started to get a little bit distracted, and so I'm bringing my mind back to my driving. So commentary driving is simply saying out loud what you are doing or what you're looking for when you're driving. I'm coming up to a roundabout. I can see that there's a car approaching the roundabout on my right, so I'm going to slow down and be prepared to stop. And it just brings your mind back to the task.
Focus on the task. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's a good one. Good tip. Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Nat. It's so nice to talk to you and to be able to kind of share with people what RYDA's all about. Really great program. We're loving being involved, and just really would encourage anybody involved in high schools in Hawke's Bay to get in touch with Nat and try and lock it in for next year. Such a valuable program, and we're really excited to do it all again.
Awesome. Can I just say I have been really pleased with the level of community involvement with RYDA in the Hawke's Bay. So, I can come in, I'm based down in Wellington, and me and our team of facilitators can come in and run the workshop, but we really want to do that in conjunction with the local community. So that's a big part of having Rotary as our community partner, is having their involvement and their support on the day. But in the Hawke's Bay, we had you and Seth, who are local, rather than bringing in somebody else as a crash investigators presenter. And we had the local police officers. We had fire and emergency as well. So one of the local firemen was actually facilitating one of the sessions. And we had the rapid relief team come and do a sausage sizzle at lunchtime, which has nothing to do with road safety, but adds to it as a community event. And it does help when the students have had a good lunch for them to engage in the afternoon. So I just really enjoyed that community aspect of it, and that that involvement with you guys and everybody else.
And I think Hawke's Bay, we have a great community here, and I think we all acknowledge we're all working for the same goals, so let's just kind of all jump in and do it together, and that's when good things happen.
It does, doesn't it? So the rest of the country is jealous of your weather. We can now be jealous of your community as well.
That's what we want. Awesome. Thank you so much, Nat, for joining me today. We'll put up your contact details at the end if anyone wants to get in touch with you. And excited to see you next time.
Great. Thanks.